This is just a summary of how we did some angle classifying today. We didn't spend too much time on it, but you do have some background from elementary school. So I thought I would just review the different types of angles you will see in your book. So think about the titles up here, and hopefully you know what each one of those means. Probably the one you're most confident with is the right angle. And a right angle is an angle whose measure is 90 degrees. And then I know from talking to you in class, acute angles, you spent a lot of time talking about in elementary school. So an angle that is acute would be an angle whose measure is between 0 and 90 degrees. An obtuse angle would be bigger than 90, but less than 180 degrees. A straight angle is like a line, 180 degrees. And then a reflex angle, for some of you may be new, is an angle that's between 180 and 360 degrees. So we're going to just draw some pictures. And your homework tonight is really just understanding what these look like and just classifying them and maybe doing a little bit of estimating without using a protractor. However, I have a protractor over here that I'm going to use just to make some nice clean pictures of angles and just to show you visually what each one of these things mean. So if I'm going to start with an acute angle, if I make an angle that it's acute, it's going to be a smaller angle that is between 0 and 90. So any angle in here, for example, I can just look at that angle, and this is kind of a nice tool. This angle, according to my protractor, is a 33-degree angle, but it's also just between 0 and 90. So I'm going to put that in this picture over here. So that's what an acute angle is. And so there's lots of acute angles. They can even be almost 90 degrees. But if it's not exactly 90 degrees, it's still an acute angle. So like that is also an acute angle. We'll just stick it over there. And if I go straight to 90 degrees, see if that's 90 degrees. That's a right angle. Whoops, that's 89 degrees. So that would still be acute. So if I go a little closer, my accuracy, that's a 90-degree angle. So that's what right angles look like. Another place you might see a right angle is in a rectangle or a square. So if I just drew a rectangle, for example, and I marked off a little right angle here, I'm going to just take some color there. One of the things is we see right angles. Whoops, I didn't get the color. In rectangles and squares quite often. So that is another way to represent a right angle. So we could put that in this picture. Just the red angle is a right angle. Obtuse angles, just more than 90 degrees. So different examples of an obtuse angle. You guys like to think of them as kind of these big wide angles. So here's an obtuse angle. And again, they could be close to 90, but just a tiny bit more. Just a tiny bit more would still be obtuse. And they could be almost 180 degrees. So that is still an obtuse angle. So all of these are obtuse angles. So they have very different looks, but they're classified the same. And then the straight angle is just like a line. See if, so straight angle looks just like that. There's only one example of those. Now the reflex may be new. So reflex angle is when you go beyond 180. Remember, you could go around and around and around, and every time you go around, it's a 360 rotation. But the reflex angle itself would be is if you start here and go beyond the 180. And so when I punch that out here, the reflex angle is this angle that you see out here. And I know that it's hard for you to see the number on that, but that angle is 229 degrees. So we call that a reflex angle. So I think if I go back to just the single page display, you can see those numbers a lot better. So going back to other reflex angles, I can go almost all the way around to 360, say 350, and the way you draw the picture of that reflex angle is by showing that the outside area is what we're interested in, and the measure is 350. So if I go back to my dual split displays, the reflex angle right there, that's 350 degrees. So there's several. This one's, I think, 270 or very close to 270. So when I had this picture of the rectangle here, maybe to make this a little more clear, is that we really just want to point to that angle. So it's clear that I'm talking about the angle, not the whole shape. So let me just put an arrow in there. So that's a 90-degree angle right there. I didn't get an arrow. Let me put a little arrow on. Well, let's be really small. So if we zoom in, let's look at that picture a little closer. Not quite easy to see, but I just put a little arrow picture there for the 90 degrees, and we'll put that back in our table. So that's it. That's all you need to know about classifying angles. I'm going to post that. I'll also print this, so if you need your own little note sheet, there's some examples.